How's it, everybody? Welcome back to That Rugby Union Show and building up to what should be a phenomenal weekend of rugby. Not too many matches, but they are crucial. The big one for our perspective is the URC Grand Final between Leinster and the Vodacom Bulls at Croke Park. Want to talk a little bit about Croke Park. I want to talk a bit about the Bulls and even Leinster, what we can expect. There's also a Premiership final happening in the UK as well. Two bitter rivals, traditional game, a hard match expected at the Allianz Arena. It will be interesting to see what happens, especially with the British and Irish Lions tour just around the corner. And there are South Africans involved pretty much everywhere still, regardless of there just only being the Bulls playing on the field. As always, give us a like, a share, a subscribe, tell your friends, join in the conversation. If you have a question, drop it in the comments and I'll be sure to ask our guest, and our guest is a special one. Before I go there, let's get to Sim, who as always joins us. Sim, I'm not feeling very well. I've been taking throat lozenges, so if you see me eating, it's not sweets. Promise it's not sweets. And I keep wondering if the Bulls are going to make me feel better about myself or not. Should I be scared? Should I not put all my eggs in the Bulls basket?
Listen, you might need those, lozenges when the choke is on at Croke Park. And when I say the choke is on, before the Bulls fans come and find me and shoot me dead in this office, actually, what I mean is either side could easily do it because of obviously their history in the competition in the URC. Obviously Leinster's got this weird record of having topped the table, but actually never, having been to a final. This is their first. And then the Bulls are in their third. They've never won a final. So, whoever loses, unfortunately, is going to be considered to have choked, which I think will be unfair. But I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to sort of get the rhyme of croak and choke. I just had to see this.
At least you're not talking about it in the context of the cricket. We're going to get to that as well, because my goodness, Lords is just showing us all sorts of stuff. Let's not talk cricket. Let's talk rugby. We've got a great guest on. He would have been with us last week, except he was traveling. So I'm really glad that he was able to join us today. And like me, he too has a case of the lurgy. Warren Brosnihan, you're a legend for joining us still, joining us from the fairest Cape. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great to see you, Sim. Great to see you, Xola. And good to be back in South Africa. I've been traveling out the country and literally got back, and the very next day took my wife away because we'd had our 22nd wedding anniversary the week before while I was in Portugal, of all places. So, I had to make up a little bit and take her away, and we had a fantastic time and just got back. And with all the travel, I've also, like you've got the little bit of the sniffles and stuff like that, but we'll overcome that and we'll be all right. But you talk about choking, Sim. There's only if Leinster lose, that's a choke. The Bulls, what they've got to do, it is a big, big task to go all the way over to Croke Park and go and play there. It's going to be a big, big task. I do believe that they've got some weapons in their arsenal that they can unleash and fire that could have an impact. So it's going to be one incredible game, and I'm really looking forward to it on Saturday.
I like how you move so quickly across the fact that you were in Portugal, but you took your wife away somewhere close to home. Is she still talking to you? That was very slick.
Yeah, we found a pretty good spot on top of a mountain, isolated, beautiful cabin, hot tub. The weather played its part. I mean, you can fill in the in between, but
we don't need the details. We don't need the details. But it really is good to see you, and two very good sides. Sim said it right up front that these teams have no reason not at any stage in the last 3 years being URC champions. They should have been there. And if the Bulls are to do it, they're going to have to do it away from home. Croke Park, I mean, you got the choke in there. The one thing that fascinates me is it's an 2,000-seater super stadium. I mean, it's an old stadium, but they've, I think, only sold about 30,000 tickets until now. Is that good for the Bulls? I think our friend Brendan now wrote an article saying, go Bulls, use that half-empty stadium to your advantage.
Look, the last time I looked, it was 30,000, which basically means it's going to be less than half full. Which, I mean, if you are going to move a game to a stadium that big, the next thing that needs to play along is the crowd, and that's already an epic fail of sorts. It's a bit like taking a game to FNB here and then getting 45,000 people in. That's still only half of the people that you're going to get in there. And actually, the other really sort of dangerous thing for Leinster in this fixture is the Bulls have actually gone to Ireland and beaten them in a knockout game in 2022 when they beat them in that final by 1 point, also in that semi-final by that 1 point. So if the crowd doesn't play along, actually this might be another leg up for the Bulls to actually do it again.
Yeah, BROZ, you played for the Bulls, and the reason that we were going to talk last week is because you also played for the Sharks, two very different cultures. But the Bulls culture, when it comes to knockout rugby, I think there's something that they do still manage to sustain through the years, regardless of change of tactics, coach, players, and that's that grit, that determination, that hard-headedness. Do you think that a tour like this, I mean, it's a short tour, you're only there for one game, one crucial moment, and it's all about that sheer bloody mindedness. Is this an opportunity for them to actually prove that despite Leinster, and I have to admit that Leinster are probably the best club team in the world, just in terms of personnel at the moment, but could the Bulls go there and actually shock people?
I believe they can. I mean, they've got to look back. Excuse me. You look back what happened last year when Glasgow came out to Loftus. Everyone thought there's no chance. There's no chance that Glasgow can come out and beat the Bulls at Loftus. And Glasgow were able to produce it. The Bulls have got to go do the same now. They've got to get in the aeroplane and prove that they can do it. You talk about the culture of the Bulls and how they play in finals. That's one of the things that the Bulls always prided themselves on. They know how to play finals rugby. They know what to do. But then in saying that, you've just mentioned that they've been in the URC final 3 times and they haven't managed to win it. So that would bug them. They've got to go there and they've got to go and try and fetch this win. I believe they can do it. The odds are stacked against them. You've got a side from Leinster that have got, of the 23. I think you said that there's 22 full internationals in this Irish side. They've managed to be able to bring a player like Gary Ringrose back in, a player like Josh van der Fleer back into that side. It's a very accomplished side. It is a really good side. So on paper, you're gonna straight away say, okay, this game's looking like it's going to go for Leinster. But I do believe, and I do believe that this Bull side can upset the rhythm. And if only having 30,000 or 35 or 40,000 people in that stadium and looks half empty is another factor that helps contribute to that. You'll just strap that along and take it and use it to your advantage. This is finals rugby. It's knockout rugby. I don't mind where you play this game in the world. You get up for it. You fly wherever you go. It's one game. You put your body on the line for this game. You play as if it's your last game, and you treat it like a final and try and win and garnish every single point that you can and add it onto the scoreboard and be intensely physical and be attention to detail on all your skills and all the various aspects of the game. And Jake and his team would have done the preparation for this, I have no doubt.
Yeah, and there's this weird thing that's happening with Leinster and Leinster fans, at least it's what I'm seeing online, where they're really being harsh and critical about them choking, to go back to the word you used right up front. There's a sense that they really should have had a lot more silverware already this season, at least in the cup competition. But it seems to be, for a lot of the fans, the last chance. And there is a level of frustration. That choker's tag is one that they don't want to have or keep. But when you start losing enough finals, when you start losing enough knockout games, when you start not playing to expectation, and I'm thinking of a team like the Sharks with all of their player personnel and how not well they've done in the last 3 seasons. Do you think Leinster are in a similar boat where they've got everything? They've got everything, just not the results that matter.
I think what's happening with the Leinster fans is it's a bit like being a Proteas fan. You've been here before. You've prayed. you've hoped, you've done, you've done everything you possibly could, for them to get over the line eventually. I mean, yesterday, I remember before the start of play with the cricket, I wrote that, we go again, Proteas, we hope again. That was on Twitter. Just to sort of like, that's the sound of someone who's been through it. And I think that's what the Leinster fans are going through at the moment. They're sitting there and they're just like, you know what? These guys have, over the last, 4 years, over the last 4 years, remember, they've lost 3 European finals in a row. It might have been French sides, but it was 3 European finals that they lost. That's the first part. And then this year, just when it looked like, they brought in Jacques Nienaber to get that, to boost their defense. And then the next thing that happens is they get those 2 scores, that's 62-0. And then they get that 52-0 against Glasgow. And everyone thinks, you know what, these guys have got it. But then they lose to Saints in the semi-final in the Champions Cup. And so I think Leinster fans are just sitting there and thinking, you know what, we're not getting our hopes up again. Not for this, especially against a team that's beaten us in both the semi-finals that we played against them. So I think that's what it is. That's probably why they're not buying the tickets, as it were. But for me, it's, the sheer sort of irony / hypocrisy, if you want to, take it far, of it is, if this was a South African final and, we booked out the FNB Stadium and, 35 tickets were sold, we'd be getting a hammering from the British media or the Irish media as well, just saying, we don't take these European competitions seriously. So who's not taking this thing seriously now? This is Leinster's best chance of winning this thing. Yeah. And yet, no one's committing to being there when it finally happened at such a historic venue as well. So I'm a bit confused. But if I were to sort of look for an answer, it would be, these guys have been through it all before, and they're sitting there and they think, no, not again. It's not going to happen. We're not going to do it.
Yeah, BROZ. I mean, the Irish fans are very similar. We always talk about similarities between Ireland and South Africa, just in terms of the way, particularly the national teams go about it. But I think that the pressure that the fans put on the national team and by extension, the provincial teams is a lot. It's very similar to what we see in South Africa. They are not happy when things don't go their way on the rugby field.
They've got the resource, they've got the players, they're expecting the result, they haven't had the result. Simmer's just explained it to us. The difference this time is they always targeted the European Championship. That's been taken away because of that loss against Northampton Saints. So they weren't able to play in that final. So all the eggs have gone into the URC now, Championship. And I mean, for a player for a manager or the head of the coaching staff, Leo Cullen, there's going to be incredible pressure on him to deliver. Should they not win on Saturday, then there are going to be questions that are going to be raised and going to be asked. And that therein lies one of the secrets for this Bulls side, is that there's got to be some sort of PST or post. There's history in this team. They've lost finals before. If the Bulls can be level at halftime or there and abouts, knocking at the door, playing some good rugby, those question marks start to go off in their head. The alarm bells start to go, and all these players, as good as they are still human beings, and there's emotions that flow through, and the class and the champion player is able to control that, but those question marks will start to ring. And, that's why it's so important that the Bulls get a good start in this game. They don't, the discipline's been a problem for them, but they must make sure their discipline is correct. They can't afford to have these yellow cards. We can't afford to have 3 yellow cards like they did against the Sharks when you're playing against a side like Leinster, because their attack shape is going to be absolutely lethal, and they'll take advantage.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. That discipline part, BROZ. I had a look at how much the two teams have actually accumulated over the season. Bulls have 8 yellow cards and 4 reds, and Leinster's probably got maximum 6 yellows and obviously no reds. So their discipline is right up there with what you would expect of a team of that caliber. But what I wanted to ask, BROZ, is we talk about all these internationals at Leinster, Irish internationals. I think in this team to play on Saturday, you've got about 19 out of 23. We look at the Irish side during World Cups, and they fall short at quarterfinals. We have a giggle about it. Well, then they're never going to get past the quarterfinals. That they jinx and whatever. How much do you think that sort of like filters down into franchise or club level? Because you now suddenly have a team that's got a similar track record. I mean, would you link the two, or is it me sort of going 2 + 2 is equal to 5?
Well, Sim, I think it's going to be there. It's latent. It's there. We're seeing it at provincial level for them as well. That's why they've brought a Jody Barrett in. That's why they've got an Ergia Snyman who becomes the player of the tournament thus far, or player's player. That's why they've got those guys, because they've got a different mindset. They want them involved. That's why they've signed up a Ricky Ione for next season, just to get that different thinking to come through and permeate through to their team. So it's got to be a factor. But they play brilliant rugby, and it's good rugby to watch. And the Bulls have been playing some good rugby as well. And but they've got a different kind of game. I mean, the Bulls don't need a lot of ball to go and win games. They can sometimes do it, living on little breadcrumbs. And when they get the opportunity and they get into 22 and they get into strike zone, they get into red zone, they go and convert. So the Bulls have been very accurate with when they've had opportunity to go and convert and to get that try. Both teams employ their kick strategy a lot. I think the Irish, the Leinster side are the biggest kicking side in the competition. So as much as we see what they do with ball, they want to do it on their own terms. They want to play. They want to make sure that they get territory and they control where the game is being played. They want that they want to be on the map in the right position on the field, and they're very clinical at breakdown as well, and they're very good at turning ball over, etc., etc. But the Bulls have got some real strengths that they can launch against this side as well, which I'm looking forward to.
You talk about obviously these teams being able to launch. One of the things about finals is if you're considered an attacking team, there can be a bit of a dilemma in terms of what's your approach going to be in a decider, because you're so used to say kicking for touch and going for the maul and trying to play instead of kicking for poles every time you get a penalty, or the teams that seem to win. If you look at the Boks, I know they're trying to sort of play a much more expansive game at the moment, but essentially in 2019 and 2023. 2019, obviously, that was one on big pack of forwards defense and basically taking your chances, popping your penalties over. And then 2023, there was a little addition of maybe counter-attacking or playing off transition. So what I'm asking is, do you maybe, when the more you try to play as a team, which is what Leinster do, they're a team that they're so heavily attacking. They've got 89 tries to the Bulls' 80 in the competition so far, and obviously those are the two sort of heaviest scorers of tries. Do you think maybe the more you try to play, the more you sort of open yourself up in that situation? Whereas if you're a more boring team, for want of a better phrase, you stand a better chance of winning simply because, well, you don't have to do much outside of your usual sort of purview to be able to win, because it's a tight game anyway.
It depends. It depends entirely on the strategy of the sides. And if we go look at the Bulls, they will usually score early off set piece. So they will score early, meaning off the phases. They don't go past 3 phases, and if they go past 3-4 phases, they don't score as often. The Leinster side, well, they can go multiple phases. Their transition play is absolutely brilliant. But so the Bulls, we've seen Villiers Leroux coming in, putting beautiful little offloads through. We've seen a kick from Sebastian de Klerk. We've seen some really incredible skills. It's the perfect final for the URC in 2024-2025 season. We've got the number 1 side playing the number 2 side. It's exactly what you want. You've got A different hemisphere this time hosting, because South Africa's hosted the last 3. So from a South African point of view, we'd be selfish. We want the game in South Africa. But from a global point of view, it's not a bad thing. Gets played over there, spreads the game. Hopefully that stadium fills up. And there's going to be a new winner. So we've had 4. It's going to be 4 different winners that are going to be in this URC. And again, it underpins the value of what the United Rugby Championship is all about. And I've ended my last 2-3 things saying I think the Bulls can. I do believe the Bulls can do it. I'm very, very positive. I believe they've got the scrum. They win the most scrum penalties. I mean, that front row, Volkalo, Grobbelaar, and Jan-Henrik Wessels decimated the Sharks last week. Sorry. That's from traveling. They decimated the Sharks last week, and they've done it to a lot of other teams. They win a lot of scrum penalties, so they scrum dominant. The Leinster side, they're the side that wins the most penalties at line-out time. So I mean, not win the most penalties, get the most steals at line-out time. They can steal from you. So what do you want? What does that mean? Well, if you're gonna watch, are you gonna kick out? What's your kick strategy? What you gonna do? Because their line-out is strong, So there are various questions that have to be asked. This Bull side's got character. They go down. They've got 3 men off. They've got 5 minutes to go in the first half. They're able to somehow survive and get through it without conceding. Of course, it's going to be a very, very different attacking shape that's going to be presented in front of them. Probably one of the best attacking shapes that's going around in world rugby at the moment with what Leinster can do. But we've seen that there's vulnerability when you attack them, when you slow them down at breakdown, when you start hitting them backwards, when they don't they don't get over the advantage line every single time. Because what they've got the ability to do, this Leinster side, if you let them get on top, they can recycle that ball so very, very quickly that your loose forwards or your defense can never fold in time. You can't get set in position. You're making scrag tackles. You can't make dominant tackles. And this whole situation just compounds itself, and they're going to get over the advantage line. The ball's going to get quicker and quicker and quicker and becomes more difficult for you to play. So it's going to be an intriguing game.
Yeah, you say you're being positive. I've never known a negative BROZ. Just a shout out to all of our mates tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, you're catching the podcast, if you're hanging with us on Community TV, thanks for being part of the union. Like, follow, subscribe, whichever platform lets you do. We do see you. And if you are just watching us live, drop your questions in. And BROZ, we've obviously shifted to tactics. I'd also like to move this on to personnel. Because the Bulls have had a number of injuries. And maybe before I touch on personnel, you speak about the things that the Bulls need to do well. The one thing, and Sim, you alluded to it, I think against the Sharks, it was 3 yellow cards, if I'm not mistaken, which is it's a high number of yellow cards in a knockout game. But key personnel, for me, Cameron Hanekom has been one of the players of the season, at least for the Bulls. They're going to miss him, but Jake doesn't seem too perturbed.
Sorry, was that for me or Sim? Sorry, I'm not sure. But for me, so for me, Cameron Hanekom is an incredible player. They're going to miss him. The good thing for the Bulls and for Jake is that they've managed to build cover. And when you've got someone like Marcel Coetzee coming in to fill in the number 8 position, he's moved Ron Nokia around, moved him from lock second row into the flank position. If this had happened now, if he hadn't played all these games already in the back row, we'd be concerned. We're not concerned. We've seen he can do it in that number 7 jersey. He leads from the front. So, yes, we would love to have Cameron Hanekom starting. He's not there. The rest have got to make it count. You've got Marcel Coetzee, Ruan Nokia, and Marco van Staden. That's a more than able loose forward trio that should be able to. I mean, you're up against Jack Conan, Scott Penny, and I think Josh van der Vlier stepped in, and Ryan Beard. So they've got to be able to match their counterparts. And I think they can.
Yeah, just that issue of the 3 yellow cards in a semi-final. You don't want to see that again, and not in a final.
I mean, I'd be surprised if it happened again. But the problem is, on tour sometimes it's so easy to get, to get the yellow card. Yellow cards for their away team are usually quite cheap. If you think about it. I spoke about the Bulls getting 4 red cards. I think 2 of those red cards were rescinded because the referees basically, they were both away, and the referees basically, the referees basically like just went over the top in terms of their officiating. So I don't think it's going to happen again. And also in rugby, from what I've seen, in the years that I've watched rugby, if one area is a problem this week or this past weekend, that the team works so hard at rectifying that by the next week, they've basically developed a new problem. It's just like the way rugby's always been. It's like, oh, we couldn't defend properly last week, and then suddenly defense is great, but the attack isn't what it could be, and so on and so on. Because rugby's got so many moving parts that you fix this area, and then another area sort of springs a leak. But talking of officiating, here's a very, very interesting stat. The ref, Andrea Piardi, the Italian, he's on his 3rd consecutive URC final, as a ref. That's great. One issue, well, if you want to call it an issue, if you're the Bulls, you're thinking, hang on, wait, there's hope here after all. In the first one that he officiated in 23, Munster Stormers against Munster. Munster won. They were the away team. He officiated last year, which was at Loftus. Glasgow, which was the away team, won. And so Piardi's middle name, in a way, is kind of like away team wins. So wherever the Bulls are, I don't know, BROZ, actually, I'm going to ask you, BROZ, how do you look at a situation like, if you're the Bulls, how do you look at this? Because obviously, on the one hand, you're sitting and rubbing your hands in glee and thinking, you know what, hang on, wait, the away team wins with this oak. But then there's a small matter of, hang on, we lost under this oak last year. So how do you look at it? Do you go the positive way? Do you go the negative way in terms of trying to work out which way it's going to go with the official?
I think you got to take the circumspect way. You've got to be positive, yes, but you've also got to realize they're playing the referee, as you quite rightly say. The yellow cards can be a lot cheaper for the away team. I think where the Bulls have grown tremendously this year. We look at that. If we reverse back to halfway through 2025 when they were overseas playing against Munster, Glasgow, I think there were a couple of Welsh games involved as well. They went through and they won those games, and I think that has been a turning point in this Bull side to have gone over, beat Munster away from home. None of the South African franchises have been able to do that. Then they go to Glasgow and they beat Glasgow at home in Glasgow, take that victory, and then if you reverse it even further back, it was the fact that they were able to go down to Cape Town and beat the Stormers down, and they were bad. They'd battled to beat them down, away from home. So they've kind of got rid of that little that little boogeyman that sits on the shoulder and asks the questions, because they've proved to themselves that they can get on the road and they can win. And so that self-belief, when you've got a pack that is strong, and you've got a youngster like Jaya van Heerden, I think that youngster, he was playing his under 20s last year. He's really grown. Kubus Visa in the second row, and then we look at the back row that we mentioned. Those guys are going to muscle up. It's. I know there's lots of rugby for some of these players still to come because we've got Springboks, great games, and all that kind of stuff. But from a franchise point of view, this is it. This is the last one. Next time you play again is when we start the round robin phase. You go 100%. You go and get this victory. It's a crucial one to go fetch.
Yeah, and Sim, talking about PRD, wasn't there a little issue with the Bulls and Munster? I can't quite remember what it was. I think he'd taken off one of the front rowers, and then they had to spend like 10 minutes without a prop. So there's already something that's, in the universe. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what went down, BROZ. You remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that. And you got it wrong. There was the number situation, and they sent someone off. And yeah, it was a mistake. So, and that definitely would have had an influence in that game. That's why you take it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioned the little boogeyman, and I suppose I should take it differently. And that for me has been Keegan Johannes, because he's been boogieing in that number 10 jumper in the absence of Johan Goosen, who is back, was back last weekend, is back this weekend as well. And obviously Jake is going to go with the man with the unerring boot. He trusts him. But one of the, I say finds of the season, he's been playing for so long, but to see him fill in at 10, for me, has been absolutely wonderful to see. And I think when you mention the depth, that's obviously the big challenge from any South African South African team point of view.
How good has Keegan been? I mean, jeepers, I thought, I knew he was not bad at scrum half, and he gets around and he's got good pace, but he's just showed different skills coming in at number 10 and doing it so well. And I know his parents are going to be so very, very proud of him and how well he's done. He's come through the systems at the Bulls, and he's commanding his spot in that squad of 23. Obviously, he's in jersey 22. But he has really, really done well. And when he comes on at fly half, it's the level of intensity doesn't drop off. He actually takes it to another level, and he's got incredible pace. He's very, very quick, and he's got a good feel for the game. So I think the development of him in that number 10 position was forced upon, I believe, with Jake because of injuries in that 10 position. But there is an example of a youngster who's in the system, who's been in the system, putting his hand up and taking the opportunity when it's presented.
Yeah, it's always good to see some. It seems like the French were always onto this one with interchangeable 9s and 10s from way back when. But looking at the South Africans and the way we are going about it, it's becoming more and more of a thing. And I think the last successful one that I've seen is Sanele Nohamba, who's obviously leaving the country. He's going to look for opportunities elsewhere. But that switch from 9 to 10, for me, was very unexpected. Also because he's a very slightly built guy. And also when you look at Keegan Johannes, he does look like a scrum half, but the way he operates in that position at 10 is phenomenal. I don't know. Is it something about the way we go about things, the way we build up attack, the way that 9s are used to scanning the field and the backfield? Do you have any theories? Why is it that we're starting to unearth these 9s who can obviously interchange with 10?
Now, look, I mean, just to finish off on Keegan Johannes playing, suddenly playing so well at 10. Sort of a little bit of digging has come up with the fact that actually he did play 10 at Garsfontein, I think it was, in high school when he came up to Pretoria. And so, it's only when he got into the Bulls setup that he thought he might sort of go a bit further on as a 9. So he's kind of like gone back to an old position. But in terms of, so many guys turning up now and being 9s and 10s, I'm not sure what theory we, any of us might have for why it's turned out that way. But there's a lot of those guys lying around. If you go to, you speak about Sanele Nohamba. Actually, there's another guy at the Sharks where Sanele came from, which is with his Jaden Hendricks.
Yes.
Jaden Hendrickson. Jaden's another one that played 9 and 10 at school, sort of almost interchanged. I think up to under 20 level, SA under 20 level, he was playing 9 and 10. If again looking at under 20 level, Nico Steyn at the Lions, he's another one who plays 9 and 10. So you've got a lot of these guys suddenly popping up, who can play both those positions. I just think it comes from knowing, I guess, from. In the same way, sometimes if you're a 10, or if you're a 15, you need to know what a 10 is thinking to be able to be in the right place at the right time all the time as a 15. I think it's that kind of like that knowledge of, well, if I'm a 9, this is what's expected of me by a 10. And then when you become a 10, your expectations are kind of like, also informed by that knowledge. But yeah, I'm not sure why it's suddenly exploding in South Africa, but maybe the French gave us the idea that it can be done. And I think sometimes, it's also the time of rugby in South Africa. It is where like the smaller players are no longer sort of, being prejudiced against in terms of, I think with guys like Butch, with guys like Andre Pollard, which if you want to take it back, Henry Honeyball, you had these biggish guys who would cut people down in that channel. And now all of a sudden, you can actually play a number and make a plan around sort of protecting him and, and looking after him. So I think it could be a bit of that. But like, to give you a sort of stone cold theory, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, you would have played after his days in Durban, BROZ, but Thierry Lacroix is probably one of the first of the Frenchmen that I saw up close and personal do this switch. He was really good at 10. But obviously there's something happening there. Just a quick shout out, a reminder to give us a like, a share, a subscribe. If you're watching us, do let us know in the comments who's got the edge, the Bulls, the Ghost Stadium, the Sharks, and a Cauldron. A big thanks to everyone who's watching across the platforms. We're building something and glad to have you part of it. All right, we did touch on right in the beginning, gents, Croke Park, half-empty stadium. But the only question I have when it comes to what might happen as a result of the numbers of fans is how much of a difference does it make, guys? When you're out there, when you're on the field, and there's been a massive build-up, and you know how it is on TV, and you get fans to come out, and it's a full house. Does it impact performance, or is it important to shut everything out? Because when you talk to coaches, they'll tell you both, depending on what it is they need to achieve. They'll say to the fans, come out, and then they'll say to the team, shut out everything that's going to possibly be a distraction. How much does it matter?
So for me, there are other things that are more important. The fact that you're not sleeping in your own bed, the fact that you're in the hotel, all that kind of stuff, that can affect you in your preparation more. Honestly, when you get onto the field, the crowd can lift you and can pick you up. And when you're tired, you get that second, third, fourth wind that you get going because you just feel the energy of the crowd. And I must say, the one stadium that really happened to me was in Kings Park, playing in the old Kings Park when that stadium was full, and the noise that used to transcend and go onto that field after we scored a try, and the sound would almost start to distort like a bad radio going like this, and it used to just, I promise you, I'd be half dead and tired, and it would just lift me, and you'd want to play. But there's nothing to stop the opposition team from channeling into that as well. So you can use that yourself because you're on the same field. Yes, there's cheering for the other side, but you've got to try and use that. So now for me, it's more the travel, it's more the sleeping in a different hotel bed. You try to keep your routines the same before the game that you do every single week. And as I said, I mean, for me, it's a big one, but it's not massive. You've got Croke Park. The other thing, maybe this is a good thing for South Africa. Croke Park is obviously Gaelic football. It's an iconic stadium in Ireland, probably one of the most iconic stadium there. Takes a lot of people. But predominantly they play Gaelic football in that stadium. And I was lucky enough when I was playing in Ulster, my wife and I went down, watched the game at the stadium, and it was very, very impressive. We watched Gaelic football, but just to see the enormity of the crowd that was there watching. If that stadium has got 30,000, like Sim was talking about, it's going to look like Ellis Park with 15, 20,000 people in Ellis Park. It's terrible. It's not great. And I just hope that the Irish people fill that up because we want a spectacle. The crowd add extra complexities to the whole broadcast that gets sent out. You think about the atmosphere and everything that comes with grand finals, and this should be the absolute peak. And you want it to be at capacity. You want everything there, and you want the ball. From a South African point of view, you want the Bulls to go and be able to be triumphant there. Obviously, if you're an Irish supporter, you're thinking the opposite, but that's okay. But I mean, that's basically what I believe. So, yeah.
Sim, the Boks played one match there. I think it was in 2009. I don't know if you were on that tour or not. I missed that one for some reason. But what I do remember is how the Irish were tapping into the history of Bloody Sunday, because Croke Park is one of those historically iconic places, when it comes to recent Irish history and the Troubles and all of this. And they really tapped into that. The Boks couldn't get a win there. It was very, very difficult for them on that day. And that's something that I know they've thought of wanting to replicate with the Bulls, but you're not going to be able to achieve the same level of fan fervor in a half-empty Croke Park and sort of, call on the ghosts of the past to try and lead Leinster to victory?
It's always a tricky one to look at. Can you sort of can you rope those elements in, and can you get them sort of flying in formation? I think sometimes sort of sentiment can be counterproductive in these things. I'm going to pick on BROZ because he's an ex-Sharks man, and go back to the '99 Currie Cup final where they had so many players, legends departing, which is Hannibal, Joubert, and I can't remember who the third one. Teichmann. Sorry.
And Ian McIntosh as well. It was going to be his last gig.
Yeah, so that big sort of farewell, we trying to, to give these guys a fitting send off, and AJ Venter and co came through and put the bash on that idea, and so it can be quite counterproductive, and also, I mean, it's just, I think sometimes it works. The history of Croke Park probably works if and only if maybe the Bulls have tapped into it as well. The Bulls need to kind of like be thereabouts in spirit. And you have to remember the Bulls themselves are sort of playing through bereavement, having, recently lost Cornel Hendricks. And so,
Right.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff going around. But you do want to be careful to want to respect what happened there, and to not kind of like just basically, use it almost as a gimmick. At the end of the day, lives were lost there, and you don't want to use it as a gimmick to win a rugby game. It doesn't matter how important it is to you. And so I'm always a bit cautious to sort of stray too much into that territory, because it can work, yes, but it can also be counterproductive.
I lost sound again, guys.
No, we didn't lose sound.
Oh,
It's because
There it is.
I was busy. It's because I was busy
muted.
coughing and eating I was eating a throat lozenge and coughing, so I muted myself.
there we go. You snookered yourself there, X.
I did. I'm an absolute amateur.
It can
So
happen.
let's wrap up. Let's wrap up. It can. Before we wrap up with the match, I want to talk about the South African effect. And I wonder if I can ask Paul if we can swap things around, because I would like to show the fixtures this weekend, because it looks like of the very little rugby that we're playing, South Africans are involved in almost every single team. Including this big URC final, and of course, and I mentioned the Premiership final as well. And just another little reminder, whether you're listening to us from Alberton or Antananarivo on a screen, a stream, a smart TV, give us a follow, drop a rating, tell a mate who still calls it rugger to tune in next time. We love hearing from you. But here you go with the fixtures. Leinster Bulls. We know the South Africans in there, including the player of the season in Ergia Snyman, who's going to come off the bench for Leinster. Jacques Nienaber, you mentioned him. I think you did earlier, when it comes to trying to get them to shore up their defense. Nothing needs to be said about the Bulls. But that South African effect is actually wonderful to see. I know we want to see our best players play for local teams here at home, but geez, it's always good to know that we're doing good things away and bringing back that knowledge.
I must admit, actually, probably the best possible person to ask this is BROZ, because he can answer the sort of from a player's perspective. Why is it that players are so sought after? I know that we produce a lot, and we produced a lot of talent, and it's kind of worked for South African rugby. It's worked for the Springboks, because, well, these guys, they go over there, they get paid the kind of money they should be getting paid, and over and above that, the other thing that happens, which I think is really important, is that they develop their games, and they're picking up all kinds of IP in different places where the Boks are going to play sort of going forward, like Ireland, like France, like England, like Japan. And so it helps South African rugby an awful lot. But the one thing I've never understood is why South African rugby players are so sought after as a commodity, because when the season ends, those guys will come in, they'll pick up more than a handful of players, and those guys won't play in South Africa anymore. So Bros, what is it? I mean, you've obviously played at Ulster. From your experiences there, what is it that makes you guys so sought after as talent?
Well, rugby is unique in that you've got to walk into the dressing room. You're all going to get dressed in the same change room. You're going to walk into that dressing room. You're not going to know players. You've got to, especially when you go to a new team overseas, you've got to go and earn their respect. That respect is not going to be given. It's going to be earned. As you mentioned, if you go, like when I went to the Bulls, and it was predominantly an Afrikaans-based side, you're an English guy there. There's only one place you can earn the respect, and that's out in the fields. Now, what do you get when you buy a South African? And I'm talking a gross generalization. Due to what we've all been exposed to here in this country, you're hardworking, you're reliable, you're punctual, you're on time, you're a discipline. Predominantly, the discipline is a very, very big factor that you've grown up with throughout your life. You've been conditioned to it, and at the end of the day, you've also got to be able to get on with people and get on in a team, in a team culture, and fit into another side. And I think there's a lot of this stuff that just on how we've been brought up, and we've been very fortunate in how we've been brought up in this country with the basic. And I don't want to compare it to other countries, but just your basic grounding and how we've been brought up as individuals, setting goals, trying to get somewhere. And these things become invaluable, and they get seen by the coach brings you into that side, starts to see a little bit of this rubbing off, starts to see the player walking around the change room, looking the guy in the eye, shaking his hand and saying, "How's it? My name's Warren. How are you doing? I'm going to enjoy playing with you." You work your way around. That's how we've been brought up. Okay, and when you start doing that and you do it in a team culture, and it translates into business, it translates into whatever you do, it's a very important attribute, and it's one that I believe that we, lucky enough, it gets in. I look at my kids, I look at what's happening there. It comes from the father, it comes from the school, it comes from the way the systems are pushed down, and that makes you a different individual, and it makes you a more worthy individual in a team when a coach has got to work with not just the 15 that are on the field, but the whole squad of 40 or even more in some cases, and work with that whole squad and put them together. You need to have guys with resilience and a bit of a thick skin, and they've got rugby pedigree with the way we've been brought up from very young age, running around with a rugby ball, been growing up outdoors. We've got one of the most beautiful countries, if not the most beautiful country in the whole world. Sun shining. We've got opportunity, open fields, whether you're playing soccer, rugby, cricket, whatever it might be, athletics. We've got the opportunity to do that. So maybe it's a bit of a sales pitch for South Africa, but that is actually that's where I see the difference.
Oh, you marketer, you. I love it, Bros. The other match, of course, that's going to highlight South Africans in the field is the big one between Bath and Leicester Tigers. The Premiership final, so many South Africans involved in this one. And I think it's the Bath team that surprised me the most. There's always been a bit of a string of South Africans. You mentioned Francois Lowe. Flo was at Bath for a number of years. Butch James, who you mentioned, Sim also was at Bath. But playing on Saturday is, I think, Quinn Roux is going to be starting in the locks. Thomas Dutoy apparently has just been absolutely murdering people in the Premiership. Interesting team with Finn Russell starting at 10 for Bath, up against Andre Pollard in the Leicester Tigers side, who's playing his final game for Leicester before returning to the Bulls. Andro Liebenberg is there. I know I'm missing a couple of them because I was just so surprised reading through the names at just how many. I might be missing one or two. But we don't watch a lot of Premiership rugby, but seeing the number of South Africans in these two games, for me, is really cool. I think it's a good sign.
Sorry, Bros?
No, go for it, Sim. Go.
No, that's great. I was going to say, of course, Bath are coached by Johan van Graan, who
Jan van Graan.
who cut his teeth as a coach at Loftus as a 23-year-old, and then moved on to the Boks, and then moved to Munster, and he's only been there for 2 years, and they're staring at the business end of a treble this season. Having won the Premiership Cup and obviously the Challenge Cup. Now this is the final frontier. The irony is, Van Graan would have been one of the coaches um, that basically okayed Andre Pollard being sort of dragged from the under 20 straight into the Bok team in 2014. He would have been one of the coaches that made that decision. Now the guy standing in his way, in the way of his of his sort of achieving this unique treble is a guy he pretty much knows as a baby almost in rugby terms. So yeah, the South African influence is completely endless.
So, Sim, and I'm glad that's exactly the point I was going to make regarding Johan van Graan. I mean, the story about him is absolutely sensational as well. I mean, he was a youngster. When I went to the Bulls, when it was the 2004, he was involved there with Hanekom doing the technical analysis, doing the line-out work, and I was blown away by his knowledge that he's got at line-out time. He learned a lot from Victor, but he was also from that he grew. And just what he's achieved at Bath is nothing short of sensational, because remember, Bath, I think, were very, very much under threat and jeopardy as to being relegated when he took over. He's come in, he's cleaned the house up, he's sorted stuff up, he's put culture, he's put values in there, and they're getting the results. And I think it's the first piece of silverware. You talk about the treble, but I think it's the first piece of silverware that they've won, and I don't have the date in front of me, but I mean, it's like for 10 years or even more, 15 years.
Yeah,
they haven't won it. So, it's an amazing story, and it's a good one from a South African point of view, and great to have one of our coaches doing so well in the Premiership. And he's a damn good bloke as well, which makes it even better.
Yeah, it's also... Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating to me as well in the coach's box before we call it quits, because you've got the Johan van Graan, who's a very calm, sort of demure, sort of withheld kind of guy against Michael Checker, probably going absolutely berserk in the other box as well. So that's going to be an incredible tussle. I can't wait to see it. Bros, we've actually run out of time with you. And I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction, because I always find those very difficult when it comes to cup finals. But your final thoughts on these two really big matches, and maybe who, let's put it diplomatically, your favorites would be. I think you've already mentioned the Bulls. This is your last chance to change your mind.
No. So don't get me wrong. I mean, Leinster are the favourites to win this game, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, with that team playing at home, they should take it. Bulls have got an opportunity to go and upset them. They can do what Glasgow did last year, and I believe they can do it. So they get their scrum, they get their forwards functioning correctly, they stick to their discipline, they get they don't give away as many penalties as they have been given, they don't give away those yellow cards, don't give away the soft moments. I believe they can do it. So is it going to be difficult? Yes, it's going to be incredibly difficult, because the home side, if you're asking me to take money out my bond and drop it in to make a prediction, you're going to go with the home team. But I do believe that the Bulls can go there and can pull off an incredible victory, which will resonate throughout Loftus, and it'd be amazing if they could do it.
Warren Brosnihan, you're an absolute legend, and there's so much I want to talk to you about. One of the other names that you mentioned earlier was Ian McIntosh, the master himself, and you having come back from a South African Rugby Legends tour. Yeah. He was crucial. He was part of that. Is there a way that people can get involved? Because you guys, I know, do a lot of good stuff. You raise funds and the rest of it.
Xola is another thing that we must give a tick to from a South African point of view. The SA Rugby Legends are incredible. What they do for the development of the game is sensational. Develop Ikawe Week, all the things that they are contributing to foster the growth of the game through the underprivileged and the less fortunate, and then also being a home for ex-rugby players to get back together again and to see each other. Like this tour we just went on now, what for me was the most amazing thing is the different generations of rugby players that were involved. To have someone like a Dari Gerber, down to a Francois Lowe, who's only retired a couple, 5-6 years ago, and all the different generations, and to be able to become friends across these generations that have played the game, and to feel the vibe of the change room again, because that we miss as rugby player. That nervous energy that you've got in the change room before you run on, that feeling in the change room when you walk off the field and you've given your all and you drink a lemonade or two together. That is special, and that's what it's all about.
I love that you stuck it to lemonade. Maybe it's an age thing, you Oaks.
It's
I don't know
stronger.
what's happening on those tours. Things have changed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was about to say things have changed quite a lot. BROZ, absolute legend. Love chatting with you always. Great catching up. I hope we get to do it again soon. Love to the family. We'll see what happens this weekend and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thank you. Great to work with you two legends. You keep up the good job that you're doing. Well done.
Cheers,
BROZ.
Yeah, absolute legend. Love BROZ, and I'm so glad he could join us. We've run out of time. It seemed to have flown by, so I'm going to give the last word to you with this Simba.
So, look, we've got one big final, or two big finals. I'm actually happy for a change, but just in sitting through the press conferences today after the URC final, I was a bit taken aback by one very small thing, which is the two coaches, obviously of Leinster and the Bulls, just kind of like looking for the underdog tag, just kind of like doing a little too much to get, to be considered the underdogs. Leo Cullen said something along the lines of, oh no, but like the Bulls have got so many internationals, and he did like this whole count. And I actually did the count afterwards. The Bulls have 12 of the Bulls is, 23 are Springboks. But there's Springboks and there's Springboks. When you look at the Sharks playing against the Bulls last week, the Sharks as Springboks were World Cup winning Springboks, whereas the Bulls as Springboks are kind of like a motley crew of guys that are still coming up in terms of, rugby. And then the other guys are kind of like, guys that are no longer really playing for the Boks anymore. If you look at Aka van der Merwe, say Marcel Coetzee, for example. So when you look at someone with 22 out of 23 internationals saying, oh, we kind of like the underdogs going into this, because obviously they've got the pressure of non-achievement in preceding years, it's obviously disingenuous. I prefer the way the Aussies do it, which is when the Aussies went into the World Test Championship final against us, they sat there and they were like, you know what, we kind of like favorite to win this thing because we're defending it. They put their colors out there. I prefer teams like that, especially when it kind of like looks a little bit stupid when you're saying, oh, we're the underdogs, and you've got literally 22 out of 23 internationals. And I'm pretty sure the one guy who's not an international in the Leinster team will be an international by the end of July. So I just, that's my sort of gripe. It's a very small one, but it's a gripe nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And it was phenomenal to see that there are so many Boks in that pool side, but not of any of them, or not many of them, for the current Boks setup.
Yeah, I mean,
I think my computer's gone a little bit slow.
They've got enough guys in terms of
Let's hear your final
guys
thoughts. I'm sorry.
In an extended squad of 54, they've got enough guys. But the question becomes, when that squad gets trimmed, how many guys will they have? And I suspect maybe not as many, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up the show there. It's a big one. There's the URC. The Springbok women are in the Rugby Africa Cup. They've played and beaten Uganda and Kenya. They face Madagascar. There's a premiership final. But your final thought, cricket, Lords, South Africa, Australia. Sim, who's taking this one? Can we do it?
We haven't batted well yet. So, yes, we can do it. Will we do it? That's a story for another day because I mean, I think I did start the show by saying we've been here before. So, yeah, it's as they say in the classics, it's the hope that kills. But can they do it? Of course they can. Australia still haven't got enough runs on the board. Hopefully, the Proteas batsmen have learned from batting this morning, what Temba and Bedingham in particular did, that you can actually play against these guys as long as you don't let them bowl at you. That's the only thing that's going to get us out of trouble. But look, it's about time we did something for the bowlers because they've done all the heavy lifting so far. And so, it's time the batsmen just, all you need is 250s. And then I think we're thereabouts,
Yeah, no, it is quite a low-scoring game. I hope they do. I need some cricket joy in my life as much as I've enjoyed rugby joy. Sim, you're a legend. Thank you very much. And to you watching from wherever you are, that is it. That's full time. Big love to everyone. YouTube fam, if you're on the podcasting side, TV crowd around Zanzi, we'll be back next week. Same time, same chaos. Until then, give us a like, subscribe, and be a true fan. Support local rugby. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.